President Moon Jae-in highlights his policies for job creation and innovative growth at the launch of a new plant by SK Hynix. Also, the Presidential Committee on Jobs announces plans to support 5 key industries to create greater employment opportunities. Over in Pyeongyang, the two Koreas celebrate the October 4th declaration anniversary, with South Koreans from all walks of life taking part in the event. The joint celebration is expected to aid reconciliation, cooperation, and peace between the two sides. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he is optimistic his trip to North Korea will lead to positive developments. Seoul's top diplomat, meanwhile, points out a different approach from the conventional inventory declaration and IAEA inspection first is needed in denuclearizing the regime. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. President Moon Jae-in attended the opening ceremony of a new SK Hynix semiconductor plant. At the event, he promised once again to tackle the nation's unemployment crisis. Arirang Seoul correspondent Hwang Ho-jun starts us off.
At a ceremony celebrating the launch of a new plant by SK Hynix, South Korea's #2 chipmaker, President Moon Jae-in highlighted his policies for job creation and innovative growth. The president congratulated the company, saying the new plant will benefit both the local and national economies. He underscored that the new plant will hire more than 2,000 employees by the year 2020 and commended SK Hynix on its efforts to create a cooperative environment between large and small businesses as well as between business and local government.
저와 우리 정부는 이렇게 투자하고 일자리를 만들고 중소기업과 상생하며 지역 경제에 기여하는 기업에 대하여 격려와 지원을 아끼지 않을 것입니다.
This was the 4th time President Moon has made a site visit to a major Korean company since taking office. Most recently, he visited the opening of Samsung Electronics' new factory in Noida, India last July. After Thursday's ceremony, President Moon chaired the 8th meeting of the Presidential Commission on Job Creation held on site at the SK Hynix plant. He pledged all-out efforts by the government to create more jobs and stressed that his administration has been doing its best to raise the nation's low employment rate. He cited systematic factors that have hampered those efforts, such as changes in industrial structures, automation, and the restructuring of major industries.
이러한 상황을 타개하기 위해서는 결국 기업의 투자 촉진과 활력 회복을 통해 좋은 일자리를 더 많이 만들어낼 수 있도록 하는데 집중하지 않을 수 없습니다.
He also vowed to work with local companies to create new growth engines through new business projects, calling it a breakthrough solution for the nation's employment crisis. The president also urged the government to support such projects as well as to eliminate unnecessary regulations to cultivate new industries. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
The Presidential Committee on Jobs held a meeting at the SK Hynix semiconductor plant. As part of efforts to create more jobs, they announced measures seeking to nurture 5 key industries in the country. Kim Hye-sung has the details.
Autos, semiconductors, IoT home appliances, energy, bio, and health. These are the 5 key industries that the government plans to nurture as a way to strengthen Korea's manufacturing sector and create up to 107,000 jobs by 2022. In the auto sector, companies will invest $4.4 billion to develop electric, hydrogen, and driverless cars and build battery stations. The investment is expected to create 4,600 jobs. The government vowed to support auto companies through an increase in car subsidies. As for semiconductors and displays, the main driver of Korea's exports, companies will invest $85 billion in 15 projects that include expansion of semiconductor factory lines to develop more efficient next-generation semiconductors. In Internet of Things home appliances, companies will invest in 9 projects that include the development of IoT platforms and testbeds. To help support such private sector investment, the Presidential Committee on Jobs said the government will provide customized support through speeding up license approvals, improving infrastructure, and easing regulations. Such measures come amid sluggish job growth, with unemployment hitting an 8-year high of 4.2% in August.
Investment in driverless cars and next-generation semiconductors. This is a move in the right direction given the sluggish traditional manufacturing industries like shipbuilding. But for it to actually succeed in the long run, it needs to be more detailed and should nurture talents. Investment in basic science, not just R&D in commercialized science, would be key.
Of the 5 sectors, energy and biohealth were selected as new industries to invest in. There are around 70 projects in energy, including the nurturing of renewables and smart energy. In biohealth, the government plans to establish a big data system to help accelerate innovation by pharmaceutical and medical device companies, and said details will be announced later this year. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
South Korea's foreign minister pointed out the U.S. should take a non-conventional approach to denuclearizing North Korea. Kang Kyung-hwa also explained Seoul is helping the two sides find appropriate corresponding measures for each other, but emphasized it's up to Pyongyang and Washington to make decisions. Lee Ji-won shares with us the top diplomat's remarks.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa says the decades-old animosity between North Korea and the United States is why Pyongyang's denuclearization requires an approach different from the conventional declaration and inspection first.
After 70 years of distrust with the U.S., denuclearizing North Korea is much harder than Ukraine, South Africa, or Kazakhstan, which quickly gave up their nukes and allowed inspections by the IAEA. This is why the North's denuclearization must be carried out together with trust-building measures, as stipulated in the Sentosa Joint Declaration.
Minister Kang made the comments at her quarterly press conference on Thursday when asked why South Korea thinks a different approach is needed. She had told the Washington Post in an interview published Wednesday that the U.S. should hold off on demanding a nuclear inventory from the North. In the interview, she noted that past denuclearization talks with the North broke down after a list was submitted when the parties were discussing verification. She told reporters on Thursday that inspection is crucial, but the U.S. and North Korea can negotiate when it should take place. Washington might not be 100% on the same page as Seoul, she said, but the U.S. too is considering those different approaches. As for what might constitute the kind of corresponding measure Pyongyang wants in exchange for dismantling its Yongbyon nuclear site, Kang noted that a declaration ending the Korean War has been mentioned numerous times. But she added that South Korea is proposing all kinds of possibilities to both sides. She did not, however, specify whether those options include reopening the Kaesong Industrial Complex or the Mount Kumgang Tourism Project, as a South Korean media report had suggested. Minister Kang did reiterate, though, that nothing will happen on that front unless there is a change in the sanctions. Minister Kang expects North Korea and the U.S. will reach a more concrete agreement during U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's 4th visit to Pyongyang later this week. She also said it's a positive sign that the visit is happening soon after it was announced and that she will be able to get the details from Secretary Pompeo immediately afterwards. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo believes his upcoming visit to North Korea will lead to positive developments, that it could help lay the groundwork for another Pyongyang-Washington summit. Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
Very happy. Those were the words U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo used to describe how he feels about his return to North Korea this weekend to continue denuclearization talks with the regime. During a news conference at the State Department on Wednesday, the top U.S. diplomat said he was very happy to be going back to get another chance to continue to advance the commitment that the leaders of North Korea and the U.S. made back in their June summit in Singapore. Pompeo also expressed optimism about the process that's underway.
I'm optimistic that we'll come away from that with better understandings, deeper progress, and a plan forward.
Pompeo declined to comment on recent negative signals from the North, including complaints about Washington's apparent reluctance to agree to a declaration to end the Korean War without major concessions. This comes after North Korea's Foreign Minister Lee Yong-ho said last weekend there was no way the regime would disarm first without seeing trust-building measures from the U.S. Pompeo also brushed aside suggestions there's a difference of opinion between himself and President Trump over a timeline for North Korea to ditch its nuclear program. Just last month, Pompeo expressed hope there would be major North Korean disarmament by the end of Trump's first term in January 2021. But a week later, President Trump said he did not have a time frame. Pompeo stressed that in the meantime, international sanctions have to remain in place on North Korea, and added there was unanimous support for the continued sanctions at the recent UN General Assembly. Pompeo's fourth trip to the North Korean capital on Sunday will be all the more important as the U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Stephen Biegun, will make his first trip there as well. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And they will be tough.
It was more than a decade ago when the two Koreas held their second ever summit. The 2000 meeting produced the October 4th Declaration. And to celebrate the anniversary, a team of 160 South Koreans are in Pyeongyang to take part in a joint event. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Woo Jung-hee joins us on the line to fill us in on the latest. Jung-hee, what was the itinerary like for Seoul's delegation so far?
Daniel, the South Korean delegation arrived in Pyeongyang this morning. The head of North Korea's Reunification Committee, Lee Sun-kwon, greeted the delegates, who include Seoul's Unification Minister Jo Myung-kyun and Lee Hae-chan, the chairman of the Nomuhyun Foundation. The South and North Korean delegates expressed hope for a successful joint event tomorrow. Take a listen to what they said amongst each other.
We welcome you all to Pyeongyang. For two of you, it's the second time you've been to Pyeongyang in 14 days. And though some of you have not met before, I've learned a lot about you through the media. We are doing our best to make your stay here in the north as convenient as possible.
I came here exactly 2 weeks ago with Chairman Lee Hae-chan. Pyeongyang now feels like the next town over. Coming here felt totally normal. There was no sense of distance or difference, like as if I were visiting my neighbor.
Seoul's delegation took a look around Pyeongyang's Sci-Tech complex later in the afternoon. It's a grand project Kim Jong-un pushed ahead with a few years ago. The complex opened in 2016 and uses solar energy to power itself. A North Korean worker told South Korea's joint press pool there that roughly 3,000 people visit the complex. Pool reporters say they could see quite a number of Pyeongyang citizens there, naturally using computers to look up data, study science, or do experiments. Seoul's delegation then watched a welcoming performance, but at the same time, Lee Hae-chan, who doubles as the leader of the ruling Democratic Party, met with North Korea's ceremonial head of state Kim Yong-nam to discuss holding inter-Korean parliamentary talks within this year. Right now, the official schedule indicates that they should be at the welcoming dinner. That's all I have for now. Daniel.
Thank you for those updates, Jung-hee. We appreciate it. The South Korean delegates taking part in the historic event up north is brimming with anticipation. Park Hee-jun turns the spotlight to the members and what they seek to accomplish during the visit.
For the first time in 10 years, South and North Korea are holding a joint event together in the North Korean capital. It's to celebrate the 11th anniversary of the October 4th Declaration adopted in 2007 by South Korea's late former President Nomuhyun and North Korea's then leader Kim Jong-il. But this trip is even more meaningful than the past ones as it involves South Koreans from all walks of life.
This is a trip not only by government officials but also members of the National Assembly, political parties, regional bodies, and civic groups. We will make this an opportunity to further solidify reconciliation, cooperation, and peace between the two Koreas.
Seoul's delegation is co-led by the Unification Minister Jo Myung-kyun and Lee Hae-chan, chairman of the Nomuhyun Foundation and the leader of the ruling Democratic Party. The Nomuhyun Foundation was set up to commemorate the late former president. No's son, No Gun-ho, is also traveling to Pyeongyang, which draws attention to whether the sons of the leaders that adopted the declaration, No himself and Kim Jong-un, could exchange greetings.
Inter-Korean relations have reached a historic phase. We are seeing some opportunities that can't be missed. I think former President Roh will appreciate the efforts by many, especially the devotion shown by President Moon Jae-in.
The joint celebratory event will be held on Friday at People's Culture Palace in Pyeongyang. But besides attending that event, the South Korean delegation will be touring some key spots in Pyeongyang, watching North Korean performances, and most importantly, meeting their North Korean counterparts for talks.
I expect we'll discuss the schedules for other inter-Korean talks and how to follow up on and implement the Pyeongyang Joint Declaration.
It's expected the Unification Minister could meet Lee Sun-kwon, the chairman of the North Reunification Committee, for high-level talks. Seoul's Vice Health Minister and Cultural Heritage Administrator are also joining the delegation, which means they too could meet their counterparts to discuss medical and cultural cooperation. But it remains to be seen whether the South Korean delegation will meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
When the current leaders of the two Koreas met for the first time in April, they agreed to hold joint events on major shared anniversaries, which is why, to follow up on that promise, Seoul and Pyongyang are celebrating October 4th together. To learn more about the significance of this date, let's turn to our Choi Si-young.
In October 2007, South Korea's then President Roh Moo-hyun made a 3-day trip to Pyongyang for a summit with North Korea's then leader Kim Jong-il. Their meeting led to the second Inter-Korean Summit Agreement, the October 4th Declaration. The date that they adopted the declaration has become another major shared anniversary for the two Koreas, in addition to June 15th, the 2000 Summit Agreement date, and August 15th, the National Liberation Day. The October 4th Declaration stipulated that the two Koreas build trust, end military hostilities, and work towards permanent peace. It also mentioned expanding economic cooperation and exchanges in fields from science to culture, as well as dealing with humanitarian issues like holding reunions for war-torn families. But after the Roh Moo-hyun administration, Seoul went through 2 consecutive terms of conservative presidents and 10 years of icy relations with the North. Marking October 4th together is one of the steps agreed on at the latest September summit. Delegations from South and North Korea, not only from the government but from all corners of society, will attend the event on Friday. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
North Korea has started detecting and removing mines from the northern side of the joint security area. Today, Pyongyang notified Seoul's Defense Ministry that it detected one mine during Wednesday's demining operation and destroyed it early Thursday in a controlled explosion. The MND confirmed the detonation. During last month's summit in Pyongyang, the two sides agreed to demilitarize the JSA in Panmunjom in order to ease tensions and build mutual trust along the border area. Part of implementing that inter-Korean comprehensive military agreement is clearing all mines from the area within 20 days starting October 1st. Seoul has already begun that process on its side of the JSA and in an area inside the DMZ so that they can proceed with a joint project to recover war remains. At the South Korean National Assembly's final interpellation session, rival parties clashed over the appointment of Education Minister Yoo Eun-hye, a lawmaker of the ruling Democratic Party. It was her first time fielding questions from lawmakers following her appointment earlier this week, which came despite the parliament's failure to adopt a confirmation hearing report due to objections from the opposition bloc. They demanded she step down, citing a series of ethical lapses and claiming she lacks required expertise. The ruling party defended Yoo, saying she is fit for the job, given her experience as a member of the Parliament's Education Committee. On other social issues, the government vowed to come up with revised policies to tackle the country's low birth rate, as well as work on measures to improve the education system, especially when it comes to young students and the college entrance system. 14 countries have been invited to the International Fleet Review, a major naval event set to be held here in Korea. Participating ships are asked to fly its own national flag as well as the South Korean flag. But Japan is stirring controversy by sticking to its decision to hoist the Rising Sun flag, rejecting the host nation's request to not do so. Kan Young-woo provides a closer look into the matter.
South Korea's foreign ministry says the Japanese government is refusing to budge on its plan to fly the controversial Rising Sun flag at the International Fleet Review that's set to take place next week at a military port on South Korea's Jeju Island. The Rising Sun flag was used throughout feudal Japan and later officially became a battle flag for the new Imperial Japan. so countries that have suffered under Japan's brutal colonization, including South Korea, China, and the Philippines, resent it. For them, the flag is considered an equivalent to the Nazi flag. Given the level of strong public sentiment over the matter, Seoul's Foreign Ministry and the South Korean Navy have asked Japan's maritime self-defense forces not to hoist the flag. But Tokyo has so far rebuffed the request and claims the country's warships are required by law to fly the Rising Sun flag, with the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea allowing every nation's naval force to fly its own military flag. But a South Korea-based Japan expert says it would be terribly disrespectful behavior.
First, flying the Rising Sun flag is diplomatically ill-mannered. It also completely neglects the host nation's request. Many people in Japan also see the rising flag as a symbol of invasion. But the Abe administration continues to distort history and neglect it, leading to situations like this.
To fight back against what is seen in Seoul as Japan's continuing impudence, a South Korean lawmaker has even proposed revisions to current regulations to prohibit ships flying the Rising Sun flag from entering South Korea's territorial waters. Kang-young-woo, Arirang News.
A South Korean national who had been missing since a twin quake tsunami disaster hit Indonesia was found dead today. Search and rescue efforts are ongoing there, with the international community working to provide much needed support. Hong Yu has the latest on the tragedy that claimed more than 1,400 lives.
The South Korean man who had been missing in Palu, Indonesia, for 6 days after since the quake and tsunami, was found dead Thursday under the rubble of the hotel where he had been staying. The South Korean Foreign Ministry announced that his body was identified by a visual inspection. After speaking with the man's relatives, the South Korean Foreign Ministry will help the family arrange a funeral and bring the family back to South Korea. But many in Indonesia are still waiting for their loved ones to be found. The disaster took the lives of more than 1,400 people and counting, while thousands have been left homeless. In response, the world is moving faster to send relief. The government of Indonesia says more than 20 countries have offered help. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has allocated $15 million from its Central Emergency Response Fund. Mark Lowcock, the Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, expects that aid to provide urgent assistance to vulnerable women and children. The UN has urgently deployed staff to the region to help the Indonesian government's own relief efforts by providing food and water and by setting up sanitary facilities. International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies is planning to provide Indonesia with more than $22 million in relief funds. Also, U.S. President Donald Trump spoke with Joko Widodo, the Indonesian president, and promised immediate assistance. The U.S. State Department says it has already provided an initial relief fund to the Indonesian authorities and dispatched government disaster experts to understand what additional help they may need. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
Time to turn to our Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, Super Typhoon Kongray is headed straight towards the peninsula, and it's expected to bring a massive amount of rain.
That's right, Daniel. Starting tomorrow, the storm will most likely bring precipitation and strong winds to the entire country, especially the southern regions, as it approaches closer to the peninsula by this weekend. And the daytime highs tomorrow are up in the 20s, but the wind chill will make it feel colder, so make sure to dress warmly as well. And most regions will receive rain by Friday until Saturday, but the precipitation is most likely to stop by Sunday, except for the east coast. And the storm will have the most effect on Jeju Island, bringing down more than 500 millimeters of rain until Saturday. And the southern and the eastern coast will see a bit less of up to 300 millimeters of precipitation, while the central region expects to be least affected. And tomorrow, most regions' readings will start in the mid to high teens. And during the day, Seoul will reach up to 21 degrees Celsius, Busan at 22, while Jeju hits up to 24 degrees. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for you in tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Wherever you may be tuning in from, thanks for staying with us.